That's right. We continue with reaction to yesterday's announcement. Let's bring in now Sam Mkokeli. He's a journalist as well as a former government communicator, joining us via our video link this time around. Sam, great to have your take on this. Thanks very much indeed for making time. So yes, sweeping changes, but also much of the old. Pravin Gordhan, Ibrahim Patel, Gwede Mantashe, and Jimotsecha, just among some of the people who, I guess, got away unscathed. A wise move or a missed opportunity from the president here?
Hi, hello, and lovely being on your show. The cabinet is really a response to a few political events. So the president is playing a real politics. So if we're to follow the logic of the wishes that more people would be chopped, the president would end up with no cabinet. Even if you were to follow the ANC's own processes about the step aside and people who have been accused of doing things, who have been in the media without necessarily being charged, or people who have been accused through the Zondo Commission, you'd find that up to 40% of the MEC itself would be tainted if we're to use that logic. So the president would be left alone running the government. So it's a difficult one for him to go all to make sweeping changes. We're not going to get that. I mean, that's a reality of the state of the ANC and the state of our leadership in South Africa. But if you allow me, Ayanda, to quickly just deal with something that Professor Duvenet has just mentioned about the RET faction and the Minister Kodongwana. His appointment is quite an important one, but our analysis must be grounded in fact. He's not an RET guy by any stretch of the imagination. He's very liberal nowadays. He's a former communist, of course, former trade unionist. But to say he's an RET guy, it's just really not understanding South African politics. He was one of the chief campaigners for Mr. Ramaphosa in the Nasrec event. So Mr. Ramaphosa has gone to his trusted Nasrec team. As he goes to get drawn closer to Mr. Ramaphosa in the presidency, Mr. Kodongwana becomes the finance chief, which is an important one. I wish there was time to get deeper into the significance of having Mr. Kodongwana in the finance portfolio. The markets will react. They might be shaken a little bit, but they will warm up easily because they know him as somebody who they would see as very sensible in terms of his economics outlook, a very pragmatic kind of character. But at the same time, there are reputation issues that the Treasury will have to deal with, considering how Mr. Kodongwana left the government previously. Allegations quite seriously about the embezzlement of trade union funds. So those issues will come back up, and the Treasury might find itself on the front pages of the newspapers, not about the Treasury's main job, but dealing with reputation risks. So that is a risk that Mr. Ramaphosa took with that appointment. But Mr. Kodongwana is a well-established player in the economics and economics policy context.
You speak about the issues possibly coming up in the future. Many might argue it's already happened. In fact, the commentary around Kodongwana is already dominated by the inference you've just made, and that's to those corruption allegations dating back to 2009. A company called Canyon Spring Investments apparently embezzling hundreds of millions of rand from pension funds of workers. The inability to have, in some respects, controlled that narrative before announcing Kodongwana. How far-reaching an impact do you reckon that's going to have on his ability to carry out his job?
Look, I don't know. I mean, it's a hard one to just say a risk. When you flag a risk, that's the only thing you can do. I don't know if Mr. Ramaphosa took that into consideration before the appointment, but at the same time, in terms of the context of the job itself, he would have looked at the ability to run that. Mr. Kodongwana is no stranger to economics. He has a master's degree in finance. I think it's from the University of London, if I'm not mistaken, or in university of that kind of stature. And he is a former finance MEC in the Eastern Cape, and he's overseen the ANC's own economics thinking for a good 15 years now as the head of the Economic Transformation ECT, so-called committee. So he's not a stranger at all in that context. And dealing with the people in the financial markets and business. But the risks are quite huge. They will need to have a strong plan to deal with that. And he has been talking about his own narrative is about the growth narrative in South Africa. South Africa does not have a strong growth narrative. We need growth to be able to create more jobs and have a prosperous economy. That is his one kind of a gospel. But right now, if I was in the team, if we can say that, I'm saying the back of my mind would be, how do you manage this one? How do you get you off the front pages? I mean, that's going to be a big issue.
Yeah, there's so much more to discuss. Very quickly, Sam, if you can. Sibongiseni Dlomo, Dr. Sibongiseni Dlomo, moving from being the head of the Portfolio Committee on Health, now placed as a Deputy Health Minister, but also has, if you like, questionable track record, many attributing the downfall of the Oncology Department in KZN to his tenure.
Yeah, that's another controversial one. This is actually the same framework that Mr. Ramaphosa has applied. It's party politics first, and reason and rationale later. He has to manage KwaZulu-Natal, the province. He has a big problem there. He needs to bring people from KwaZulu-Natal closer to him. That's the sole reason the Mkokeli is unscathed in all of this. He now loses as well in Kize out of the digital vibes scandal. There are many other problems that are related to KwaZulu-Natal and the consequences of the Jacob Zuma kind of politics and response to his arrest. So the appointment of the deputy health minister is a controversial one, but it's mainly to appease the KwaZulu-Natal province. It's the biggest province in terms of ANC numbers, takes the most delegates to ANC conferences. He's merely playing that kind of politics, very reactionary kind of a cabinet reshuffle.
Sam Mkokeli, great to get your insights on this. Really appreciate your time on the AM Report this morning. Sam Mkokeli is a journalist and a former government communicator. Once again, thanks very much indeed.